This happened to me a few months ago, and I'm still thinking about it today. I had just gotten back home from work, feeling tired and ready to relax after a long day. I was looking forward to a quiet evening alone, with no distractions, and the house was quiet and still, just the way I liked it. It was a Thursday night. I remember because I was watching one of my favorite weekly TV shows live. Rain was pounding against the windows, making a steady, calming sound that made my warm living room feel even cozier. It was the kind of night where you're just happy to be inside, wrapped in a blanket with a bowl of popcorn in your lap. Around 11 p.m. during a commercial break, I decided to grab some more snacks from the kitchen. The house was quiet except for the sound of the rain and the low hum of the TV. As I passed by the back door, I suddenly heard a faint scraping noise coming from the backyard. At first, I didn't think much of it, assuming it was just the wind moving something. But the noise kept going, scratching at my mind and making me feel more and more uneasy. Curious, I opened the curtains and looked out the window, immediately freezing. There was a person in my backyard, digging into the wet ground with a big shovel. The rain poured down on him as he worked, creating a growing pile of dark, wet soil next to a deepening hole. He seemed completely focused on what he was doing, which made the whole scene even more frightening. At first, I wasn't scared, just confused. Why would anyone dig in my backyard in the middle of a stormy night? I decided to turn on the porch light, hoping it would catch the guy's attention, and he'd realize he was at the wrong house or something. But the moment the light hit him, he stopped digging, stood straight up, and looked right at me. I could barely see his face through the heavy rain, but his intense gaze through the rain-streaked glass sent a chill down my spine. His eyes were cold and unblinking, locked onto mine with an unsettling intensity. My heart pounded as we stood there, staring at each other. I backed away from the window, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. When I looked back, he was gone, vanished without a trace. There was no sign of him running away, no movement in the shadows. He had just disappeared into the night, leaving me standing there, heart racing and mind full of questions. After a while, I couldn't just sit there anymore. I left the lights on in the backyard and checked all the windows and doors to make sure they were locked. My heart raced with every creak of the house, and my hands shook as I double-checked each lock. I went from room to room, peeking through the blinds and curtains, but I didn't see any movement outside. The rain kept pouring, and the darkness outside seemed to swallow everything. I checked the back door, then the front, and finally every window in the house. Once I was sure everything was secure, I returned to the living room and sat down, trying to calm my nerves. I kept the lights on, every single one, hoping it would make me feel safer. But the image of the man digging in my backyard and then disappearing into the night stayed with me, refusing to let me relax. Eventually, I got so tired that I fell asleep on the couch. Then, just past midnight, it happened all over again. The scraping sound jolted me awake. My heart pounded as I forced myself to look through the window. There he was again, the same man, digging like before as if he had never left. It was as if he was on a mission, completely unbothered by the storm. His intense focus and steady movements terrified me all over again. I immediately ran to my phone and called the police, my hands shaking as I explained the situation. I described the man and what he was doing, all while keeping an eye on him through the window, terrified that he might suddenly look up and catch me watching again. The police told me that officers were on their way, but every second felt like forever. I kept watching him from the window while I waited, but this time I didn't dare interrupt. He just kept on digging, making the hole deeper with each scoop of dirt. Then, just like before, he stopped digging. This time, he looked straight at the house. I ducked away from the window, hoping he hadn't seen me. I held my breath as I heard soft, deliberate steps on the back porch, followed by another, then another, getting closer and closer. The back door handle rattled softly, a faint sound that sent a surge of panic through me. I pressed myself against the wall, staring at the door and hoping it would stay shut. My mind raced with thoughts of what he might do if he got inside. The handle shook again, harder this time, but thankfully, it was locked and didn't open. I held my breath, my whole body tense, every muscle ready to react, waiting for what might happen next. The door shook one more time, the noise echoing through the silent house, and then everything went quiet. I strained to hear any sound, any sign that he was still there, but there was nothing. The silence was almost as scary as the noise. I didn't move until I saw the flashing lights of the police cars through my living room window. The relief was overwhelming, and I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. The police were finally here, and for the first time in what felt like hours, I felt a glimmer of hope. When the police arrived, they searched every place in my backyard and around my house, but found no signs of the person who had been digging. They inspected the hole, but couldn't find any clues as to why it was there. They took my statement and assured me they would keep an eye on the area. The police filled the hole back in, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why would someone dig a hole in my backyard in the middle of the night? The hole was big, almost the size of a grave. Was the person planning to kill me and bury me there? The idea that someone might have planned to end my life in such a calculated way was a fear that locking the doors couldn't stop. Or could it be that he had killed someone and was trying to bury the body in my backyard? The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. What if he came back to finish whatever he started? I packed up my things and moved out, hoping to leave the fear behind. I found a new place in a different neighborhood, far from the memories of that night. But no matter how far I went, I couldn't forget the image of the man's eyes staring at me through the rain-soaked window. They haunted my dreams and filled my days with dread. I often wonder what he was really planning. Was I just in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or was he specifically targeting me? The uncertainty eats at me, making it hard to feel safe anywhere. Even now, I can't help but glance over my shoulder, half expecting to see those cold, unblinking eyes watching me. The experience has left me paranoid and jumpy, always on edge. I keep the doors and windows of my new home locked all the time, double-checking them before bed. I've even set up security cameras around the property. But despite all these precautions, a part of me knows that no amount of locks or cameras can take away the fear that someone might come back to finish what they started. The man's eyes, piercing through the darkness and rain, remind me that true safety is an illusion. I was surprised that he wasn't even scared. This thought stays with me, making it hard to find peace. The night he disappeared into the storm, he took my sense of security with him, leaving me forever changed. I was 16 at that time, just a normal high school junior trying to get through the year. It was a Friday evening, and my parents had left early that morning for a weekend business trip. They wouldn't be back until late Sunday night, leaving me in charge of the house. I wasn't really excited about the responsibility, but I thought it was a good chance to show I could handle it. I had never stayed home alone before. My parents were always with me, so this was a new experience. Before leaving, my parents told me not to open the door for anyone and to check all the windows and doors before going to bed. They were very clear about making sure everything was locked up tight. The weather had been miserable all day. It kept raining non-stop, making everything look gray and gloomy. By evening, the rain was still coming down, tapping on the windows in a calming rhythm. It was the kind of weather that made you want to sleep. But I wasn't the type to sleep at night. I almost always stayed up late. So instead of sleeping, I was up late studying for an important exam. The evening started pretty normally. I had been studying for hours, and when I finally got tired and hungry, I decided to take a break and relax. I warmed up some leftovers for dinner, nothing fancy, just some microwave mac and cheese, and sat down to eat. It was cold inside the house, so I wrapped myself in a blanket. Feeling exhausted from all the studying, I decided to watch some TV before going to bed. The sound of the rain outside was soothing, and for a while I felt relaxed and almost forgot about school stress. I was also chatting with my friends in our group chat on WhatsApp, discussing stuff related to the exam. A couple of hours into watching TV, my phone was almost dead, so I paused the show and went upstairs to get my charger. That's when I noticed something strange. Big, muddy footprints were leading up the stairs and onto the carpet. They looked fresh and were definitely too big to be mine. I stopped cold. It was weird because I hadn't been outside all day, so I knew I couldn't have brought that mud in. I took a deep breath and tried to calm down. I told myself maybe I had accidentally stepped in something without knowing. But deep down, I was sure as hell I hadn't brought that mud inside. I walked to my bedroom, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. As I pushed open the door, my heart nearly stopped. There was a man in my room, going through my drawers quickly and frantically. He was wearing a dark hoodie with the hood up, hiding his face. Papers, clothes, and personal items were scattered all over the floor. The man turned around quickly when he heard the door, and our eyes met. His eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, we both stood there, frozen, staring at each other. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what was happening. Suddenly, the man rushed toward the door, but I reacted quickly. I slammed the door shut with all my strength. The door banged loudly, and I struggled to lock it from the outside with my trembling hands. The man started banging on the door like a maniac. The noise echoed through the house, making my heart race even faster. With adrenaline pumping, I sprinted down the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. I grabbed my phone and called my parents, hoping it wouldn't die because it was only at 4%. My hands were shaking so badly as I told them what was happening. They told me to calm down and said they'd call the police right away. They told me to get to the neighbor's house, Mr. Anderson's, and hide there until the cops showed up, promising that they'd be there soon, too. Every creak of the house made me jump as I ran through the rain to my neighbor's house. I knocked frantically, and thankfully, they let me in right away. I quickly explained what was going on, and they kept me safe while we waited for the police. The wait felt like it took forever. The rain was pounding on the roof, and the lightning flashes made everything more tense. I could hear my heartbeat, and every minute felt like an hour. Finally, I saw the flashing lights of the police car through the rain-soaked window. When Mr. Anderson saw the police arrive, he quickly grabbed an umbrella and ran outside. I stayed inside for what felt like hours before Mr. Anderson and an officer came to see me. The officer said they didn't find anyone in the house. They thought the man had escaped through a window and mentioned that he could have gotten in through the back door, which they found slightly open. That's when it hit me that I had left the back door unlocked. A wave of guilt and fear washed over me as I realized this all happened because of my carelessness. Not long after, my parents arrived, soaked but relieved to see I was okay. They hugged me tightly, their faces a mix of worry and relief. The police assured us they would continue to patrol the area and look for the man. They explained that extra officers would be in the neighborhood for the next few days, just to make sure everyone felt safe. We thanked Mr. Anderson for his help and support. Once the police left, I sat with my parents and neighbors, trying to wrap my head around everything. The realization that my carelessness in leaving the back door unlocked had led to this terrifying experience weighed heavily on me. I felt a mix of guilt, fear, and relief. That night, I found it hard to sleep. Every shadow and noise made me jump. The rain kept pouring outside, no longer comforting but reminding me of what had happened. I knew I would never forget this night and the lesson it taught me about being vigilant and careful. I'm a single parent, and my daughter was away on a school trip that night. The house felt unusually quiet without her chatter and the sounds of her moving around. Normally, we'd be watching a movie together, or she'd be doing homework at the kitchen table while I read. But tonight, it was just me and the storm outside. The rain was pouring down hard, hitting the windows loudly. Every so often, lightning would light up the room, followed by thunder that echoed through the whole house. With my daughter away, I took the chance to relax after finishing up some house chores. I had just completed a long day at work, dealing with reports and meetings, and was looking forward to a quiet evening. As the night went on, the storm got worse, and the rain hit the roof harder. I looked at the clock. It was 11:45 p.m. It was late, and I thought about going to bed, but the cozy warmth of the living room was too nice. I decided to stay up a bit longer and maybe read a few more chapters of my book. Just then, I suddenly heard something. It was a sharp, urgent knock on the front door. I froze for a moment, confused. I wasn't expecting anyone, and it was strange for someone to come over at this time, especially with the storm outside. I slowly got up and looked through the peephole. I saw a man in a soaked delivery uniform holding a large, wet box. He shouted over the thunder, saying I needed to sign for a delivery. It was strange because it was so late, the storm was so bad, and I hadn't ordered anything. Something didn't feel right. The man seemed nervous, his eyes darting around, too pushy for a normal delivery. I hesitated, then spoke through the door, saying I didn't order anything and that he might have the wrong address. But he insisted that I open the door and kept pushing, saying it was an important delivery that I had to sign. I told him again to leave the package on the porch and just go away. The man reluctantly left the package and walked back to a van parked across the street. The engine was still running, and the headlights shone through the rain. As I watched him leave, he didn't drive away. Instead, he turned off the engine and just sat there, staring at my house. I squinted through the rain, trying to see the license plate so I could report it to the police. But there was none. It was just a white plate with nothing on it. This made me even more suspicious. Minutes felt like hours as he sat there, motionless, just staring at my house. The rain kept pouring, tapping against the windows, but it didn't calm my nerves. I felt trapped, like a prey being watched by a predator. I couldn't stay calm any longer, so I decided it was time to report the suspicious behavior. Just when I was about to grab my phone, I heard knocking on the front door again, this time more frantic, more desperate.
Open up! It's urgent!
The delivery man yelled, his voice sounding threatening. I took a deep breath and shouted through the door.
If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police.
My heart pounded as I waited for his response. There was a tense moment of silence. Then the knocking stopped. I looked through the peephole, but I couldn't see anyone. The van was still there, but I hadn't seen the man walk back to it. A feeling of dread washed over me as I moved from window to window, trying to see more without being seen. Then I spotted him walking around my house, stopping at the back door leading to the kitchen. The kitchen light was off, so I was hidden in the shadows. I watched in horror as he tried the door a few times, testing it to see if it would open. Thankfully, it stayed shut. I always checked security before going to bed, so there was no easy way he could get in. I followed the man through the windows as he again walked back to his van and sat there, watching my house. I called the police right away, explaining the situation and describing the man and his suspicious behavior. Just as the officer assured me that help was on the way, the van started to move and the man finally drove away. The police arrived shortly after, and I told them everything. They took my statement and promised to watch the neighborhood. They also checked the package the man left. It was just an empty shoebox. This confirmed my fears. The man wasn't a delivery person, and his intentions weren't good. It was clear he was trying to trick me into opening the door so he could get into my home. The officers reassured me that they would increase patrols in the area and advised me to stay vigilant. They took down all the details I could provide about the man and his van. I thanked them, feeling both relieved and still a bit uneasy. The next morning I talked to my neighbors, telling them what happened and asking if they had experienced anything similar. But no one had seen a delivery man at night. They promised to stay alert and keep an eye out for anything unusual. I couldn't stop thinking about the man. What did he want? Why did he come to my house? Was it just a coincidence? Or was he targeting me? Was he trying to break in, or was there something else? And worse, what would have happened if I had opened the door that night? The questions swirled in my mind, each one more unsettling than the last. The man never came back, and there was no sight of the van again. And I guess I'll never know the answers to my questions.